Hey guys, Tarke here, and I'm currently in the process of leveling my 4th trapper of the league. I've been playing a whole bunch of trappers recently in hardcore, and I've been getting a lot of questions. Basically, Tarke, why would you ever play traps when mines exist? Traps have always been one of my favorite archetypes, and they're very underplayed at the moment, and they have some issues. So I decided to write up a neat little Google Doc. Now, these are just some ideas. Nothing of this is perfect, but, you know, I thought I'd put it all in here. So, just to start off. Traps are currently more than viable, but suffer from poor PR and are criminally underplayed. These are just some thoughts and suggestions I have on the topic of traps as someone who plays them often. These ideas are by no means perfect and are merely a way to promote discussion on my favourite archetype. So, perceived community issues with the current state of traps. Why play traps when mines exist? The mine rework made mines much closer to traps in identity and introduced several powerful new clusters offering enemies take up to 10% increased damage and deal up to 10% less damage. Traps considered an awkward playstyle due to slow base throwing speed and low trap trigger radius. This mentality has been exaggerated by the high base throw speed of mines, but was still considered an issue by many even before the mine reworks. If you don't know, traps aren't instant cast. You have to throw them, they arm, enemy has to walk on them, or they trigger after a delay, and they explode. Unlike mines, which you throw and then can instantly detonate. Limited build options due to most trap quality of life being in the Saboteur Ascendancy. Squishy builds due to the layout of the passive skill tree, making many players feel forced into sticking mostly to the shadow, range, and witch areas of the tree. The way I've gotten past this issue in my recent builds is I travel all the way into Marauder and Scion. And when you do that, you get like 200% life trees. This is with no gear, which is why it says 1k, but yeah. My last character had 6.6k life with this kind of a setup. Anyway. Lack of interesting trap chase items to inspire build creation. Currently in Metamorph, according to Pee Wee Ninja, only 0.3% of the total player base are trappers, while 7% are mine builds. In Hardcore Metamorph, 0.4% of the player base are trappers, while 6% are mine builds. Of all Saboteurs in Metamorph, 3% are trappers, while 91% are miners, leaving 6% of builds unaccounted for. This might be because they've just emptied their slots or they're doing random things. In Hardcore Metamorph, 5% are trappers, while 93% are miners, leaving 2% of builds unaccounted for. So these are my proposed changes to improve the issues that people have with trappers currently. With the Saboteur Ascendancy, move chain reaction onto the tree, much like how Wicked Warders moved onto the tree from a cultist. Replace chain reaction with a new trap 4-pointer that adds additional charges to cooldown based traps and a large portion of cooldown recovery for traps. This will help promote 2 distinct different playstyles in the trap archetype and help differentiate traps from mines. This idea will be expanded upon later. If you aren't aware, chain reaction is this 4-pointer here, which means that when your traps trigger, your nearby traps also trigger. This solves a lot of the quality of life issues people have with trappers. Passive tree changes. Master Sapper and Unstable Emissions move back to the outside of the tree. With all the recent changes we've had to the skill tree, there have been massive reworks of the Ranger side of the tree. Master Sapper, which is a very powerful cluster for traps, one of the most powerful in fact, gives trap damage, trap trigger, additional traps, and chance to gain frenzy charges. It used to be by acrobatics. There's also Unstable Munitions, which gives trap damage, some air effect, and a large portion of trap trigger air effect. This trap trigger air effect is crucial if you're playing a non-chain reaction Saboteur, or if you're playing a non-Saboteur trapper. Because of their awkward placement here, it's very difficult to take it on very many builds, which means you often feel trapped in this part of the tree. And this is sort of solved with Blight and Annoyance, but really, they should be moved alongside the other trap clusters. In total, there are currently only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trap nodes on the entire tree. These 5 are all in very close proximity, very neat routing to one another. These 2, just awkward. It's horrible. Now, those are really the only changes I'd make to the passive skill tree. Trap skill gems. Fire, Lightning, Ice, and Explosive Trap now all gain 0 to 19% trap throwing speed with levels. This matches the Trap Support Gem. The Trap Support Gem, as you level it, gets the trap throwing speed. Having just that little bit of extra base trap throwing speed really solves most of the issues people have with these builds. When you play them with no trap throwing speed, no trap trigger, they feel very rough. Once you start to stack it up, that's when they start to feel quite smooth to play. Make both Bear and Siphoning Trap have a throwing speed multiplier of X% of base. We have this effect on melee abilities, where some melee abilities scale harder with attack speed than others. So I'm saying introduce this scaling to specifically Bear and Siphoning Trap. This would dramatically increase their usability as powerful utility skills for trappers, while not buffing them for builds and not scaling trap throwing speed. I think it's very important that trappers and miners feel distinct from one another, and it's also important by buffing traps, you're not just making every non-trapper build get buffed while trappers kind of just float around awkwardly. Increase the life and mana regeneration granted by Siphoning Trap. Currently, many trap builds go in one of the following directions to solve their mana issues: Eldritch Battery with Tinkerskin, Blood Magic from the Incursion Gloves, or an Enduring Mana Flask. Giving a throwing speed multiplier to Siphoning Trap and increasing its regeneration would offer a more reliable form of sustain that rewards active gameplay for trappers, fulfills the purpose of the ability, and would prevent it becoming OP for a build that doesn't invest into trap throwing speed. This would also help undo some of the indirect nerf trappers took when Pyromaniac was changed from 20% to 10% life per second to stop mine builds becoming ridiculously powerful with their rework. Trappers always had this thing where they had very high sustain, but generally very low HP pools, unless they were doing what I was doing, going all in stacking life. So they had a very good playstyle. They were evasion-based, high regen, low total health pool. Many going mind over matter, so again, 4-5k HP pools. By cutting that in half, this was a balance thing to stop miners coming from too silly, but it hurt trap builds very seriously. Siphoning Trap sees very little use. I've recently been experimenting with it. It feels okay to use, but the trap numbers speak for themselves. They need to see some love. Getting into the trap support gems. Cluster and multiple trap supports both now gain 0 to 19% trap trigger AoE with levels. Much like the previous suggestion, just increasing the base trap trigger at a standard level will make the build feel much smoother to play. And I would add this to both cluster and multiple traps, because some people prefer the playstyle of cluster, some people prefer the playstyle of multiple. Trap and mine damage support. Either remove the 10% throwing speed penalty, or add a 1% trap throwing speed per 2% quality on the gem to offset this penalty. If you don't know, trap and mine damage has a throwing speed penalty. Anything which reduces throwing speed feels very bad. It doesn't feel that bad on mines because they have such a high base throwing speed, but traps which are much slower, it feels awful. Introduce a new trap support gem that offers a large 54% more damage multiplier, but adds a cooldown and charge system that replicates the old trap playstyle from before the Incursion rework. This would reintroduce the classic playstyle of trappers, allow more build options, and would have synergy with the proposed new Saboteur Ascendancy node. For anyone who started playing after Incursion, all traps used to be cooldown based. Every single cap would have a max amount of charges and would have cooldowns. By reintroducing this playstyle, you would help differentiate traps from mines, and you could build synergies around cooldown stacking, having these big cooldown traps like we currently see with Flamethrower Trap, Lightning Spire, Siphoning Trap, but then also doing that maybe that you have big cooldown fire traps or big cooldown explosive traps. Really lean into that archetype while not undoing the work the Incursion rework did. Existing trap uniques. Unstable Payload. This is a unique jewel which is somewhat useful, but it's just very confusing in its wording. It's currently worded as 8 to 12% chance for traps to trigger an additional time. It doesn't actually do that. What it does, it causes your traps to rearm. What many people think this does is that when your traps get triggered by an enemy, there's a 12% chance they instantly get triggered again. They don't. They just rearm. You can still make them powerful by stacking trap trigger AoE, but it's just unnecessary in its current wording. They should fix it, or maybe make it do what it says it does. Sunblast. Sunblast is a unique belt, which currently gives 80% reduced trap duration. change it to be 100% reduced trap duration. There used to be a playstyle in old PoE where you would go for Sunblast and 2 Jewels, and you would get instant grenade-like traps. By making it 100%, you can still have that playstyle, but it still has the opportunity cost of using a belt with 0 life on it. Currently, to achieve instant traps, you need to sacrifice a belt, 2 Jewels, which have no life, no ES. As the game continues to become more challenging, this is a death sentence for an archetype that is historically on the squishier side of builds. Future trap uniques. Make a chase item for traps, as currently the closest chase is the incursion gloves. Possible chase mods would include a source of onslaught for trappers. Currently, trappers have no way of generating onslaught neatly outside of a silver flask, since the traps kill enemies, not you, unless you're doing a burning ground trapper, but anyway. Additional charges for cooldown-based traps, since I'm trying to push the cooldown-based archetype. Even if you're playing a traditional current trapper, if you're using flamethrower trap or lightning spire trap or seismic trap, have a unique giving you additional charges would make that feel more powerful. So it would be good for even current day trappers. Something that reduces your maximum cap of traps but increases their damage to compensate. Currently, all trap and all mine builds, for that matter, just want as many traps and as many mines as possible. Having a new kind of mechanic which made it so you had less traps out at once, but the traps felt more powerful, would be very powerful for giving you higher burst damage. It'd make your mapping feel more powerful, since you'd be throwing less traps in general. And it would also, again, help differentiate traps from mines. If the trap throwing speed multiplier is not added to trap utility skills, perhaps unique making these abilities instant would also work for keeping the effect specifically trap only. So if they didn't want to do the trap multiplier thing, they could have a unique where like bear trap and siphoning trap are now instant cast alongside some other helpful mods. This would be very helpful, since currently if you're playing a trap build, a traditional trapper will use bear trap for the more damage it provides, then a cooldown trap, and then you spam your right click. So let's say you summon a Metamorph, you're like bear trap, charge, 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 then you start throwing. If you then introduce siphoning on top, you're then being like bear trap, charge, 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 siphoning trap, throw, 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 throw. Being able to reduce that setup time would be pretty nice. But anyway, these are just some ideas. Traps are my favorite playstyle. They are currently very viable in the game. They could do with some love though. Anyway, I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.